In this segment, I will be discussing the process the sales consultant should use during the trade appraisal. Before we begin, if you have not done so already, please download the forms that go with this segment. To make sure we're all on the same page, let me explain the goal of the trade appraisal process for you, the sales consultant. Your goal is to convince the customer that the value your manager or appraiser placed on the customer's vehicle is what the vehicle is actually worth. This means they should agree to it. Before we discuss the correct process, let me tell you what a traditional trade appraisal process looks like. Now, your process may be similar to this or only encompass part of this traditional process. In either case, I want us all to be on the same page. So let's look at the traditional trade appraisal process. During the traditional trade appraisal, the sales consultant may get some brief information from the customer, such as mileage, any accidents, maintenance history, and things like that. He then gives the sales manager the keys to the trade and waits with the customer while his manager puts a number on it. Once the manager has a number, he will then give it to the sales consultant to share with the customer. Now, this might be an actual number or it might be a trade difference figure. For our purposes, let's presume it's an actual number. Now, this number does not represent the ACV or actual cash value. The reason it doesn't is because everyone knows that it doesn't matter what number you tell your customer, they are going to want more. Let's look at an example. Say the ACV of a vehicle is $5,000 and the customer wants $6,800. You tell the customer their trade is worth $3,800. Why? So when you start negotiating, you can end up somewhere between $6,800 and $3,800. Hopefully close to, but not more than $5,000. Does this process sound familiar? Well, it should. It is the same process that we have been using for the past 30 years. Things have changed since the 70s. Perhaps we should change too. The traditional trade appraisal process has several problems. First, from both the customer and your perspective, it increases anxiety. As you see in our other videos, a sales consultant needs to be increasing trust and reducing anxiety if you wish to increase your gross profit and CSI. Going back and forth between the customer and your manager does not increase trust. It is also not the most pleasant experience for you either. Second, as you have also seen in our other videos, you need to build value in the sales process, and in this case, the trade appraisal process. If your customer spent more time determining a number for their trade than your manager and you did, then you did not build any value in the process. It is difficult to get all the money if you don't build any value. Finally, it is not the 70s or the 80s anymore. Your customers are more educated than ever. Over 80% of them have been online prior to coming to your dealership. Don't you think they know what their vehicle is worth, or at least what Kelly's Blue Book says it's worth? We cannot be afraid that they have this information. We have to embrace it and use it to make our case. Let me explain the better trade appraisal process. The first thing you need to understand is the difference between the trade evaluation and the trade appraisal. You will be evaluating the customer's trade. Your manager will be appraising the customer's trade. When a customer tells you they have a trade, you are going to explain to the customer how you are going to arrive at a value for their vehicle. You will say something like the following: Mr. Jones, may I explain to you our trade appraisal process? First, I will gather some preliminary information from you about your vehicle. Next, you and I will go and evaluate your vehicle using this evaluation form. We will walk around your vehicle as well as take it for a drive. We will then come back inside and I will have my manager do a more formal appraisal of your vehicle. In order for him to determine the value of your vehicle, he will look at or take into account a few things. First, he will look at an industry trade appraisal guide, such as Galv's, NADA, or Black Book. He will also look at auction reports, which show what vehicles like yours were selling for at recent auctions. He will also take into account reconditioning costs, since we cannot take your vehicle as is and put it on our lot for sale. We have to guarantee inspection, etc. He will also factor in market conditions or supply and demand. For example, if we have 10 vehicles like yours that have not sold for 30 days, then that will deduct value from your vehicle. However, if we sold 10 vehicles like yours over the weekend, that will add value. Finally, he will review the information that I provided him with, including our evaluation, as well as the service and repair history of your vehicle. He will also get a Carfax report about your vehicle. After taking all of these things into account, he will determine what your vehicle is worth, and he will tell me so I can tell you. How does that sound? Hopefully, you noticed a few things in my conversation with the customer. I described everything that goes into determining the value of their vehicle. I didn't lie. What I said is exactly what should occur and what your appraiser actually does when he appraises a vehicle. I know that if a customer is trading in a 3-year-old Camry and you're a Toyota dealer, then your manager probably doesn't even have to look at the vehicle to put a number on it. However, the reason he doesn't is not because he didn't do the things I described. It's because he's done them 1,000 times before. Now, as I mentioned in the building value video, by explaining in detail your process to the customer, you are building value in the process. If you take 10 minutes to come up with a number for the customer, and that same customer spent a half hour coming up with their number, they will immediately discount the value of your number. So take your time in explaining this process. Finally, you will notice that at the end, I asked the customer for permission to continue. I said, "How does that sound?" If the customer says anything positive, like good, great, etc., we continue through the sales process. If the customer says anything negative, then I have an objection that I can handle right away before continuing on. So, after you explain the process to the customer, you will then begin your evaluation. You are going to first gather some preliminary information from the customer. The questions we recommend are on form number 1. I left room to add your own questions as well. Next, you and the customer will look over the vehicle together. Form number 2 is a used vehicle evaluation sheet that outlines the evaluation process. It describes what you will be looking at and saying to the customer as you evaluate their vehicle. During the evaluation, you'll be filling out form number 3. As you evaluate the trade, you are pointing out items that will both add value as well as those that will deduct value. You will also notice that I recommend you drive the car with the customer. If you do not drive the car with the customer, at least get inside with them and start the car and check all of the equipment, the air conditioning, the power windows. Once you have completed the evaluation, you and the customer will go back inside the dealership while your manager does the appraisal. The reason I want you to do all this is because it will help you overcome their objection to your number. I know your customer is not going to agree to your number just because you did this elaborate process. However, when you begin to overcome their objection to your number, you will use the information that you gathered from them. Let me repeat that. The customer will always object to your number. Your job is to convince them that your number is what the vehicle is actually worth. As you go through the trade evaluation process with the customer, you will be gathering the information that will help you overcome their objection to your number. I would like you to watch the trade appraisal process in this video role play. Before it begins, I want to explain a few items. First, the reason the appraisal process for this role play is indoors is to better show it to you without any visual or audio distractions. Second, watch as I do all of the things I mentioned earlier. Also, I will show you how to overcome the customer's objection to the number we put on his trade. In this role play, the customer will use Kelley Blue Book as the reason he feels his trade is worth more. Take some notes, and I will be back after the role play. Mike, you mentioned that you want to trade in your 2003 Discovery. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now is explain to you our trade appraisal process, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, the way our trade appraisal process works is the first thing we do is you and I sit here at the desk and we get some preliminary information about your vehicle. Once we've gotten that preliminary information, then we will go outside and do what we call an evaluation of your vehicle. We will fill out this vehicle evaluation form. And we will we'll walk around your vehicle, we'll get in your vehicle, and on this evaluation form, what I put on here is those things that are going to add value to your trade, as well as those things that may deduct value from your vehicle. Once I'm done with this evaluation, I will give it to my manager. He will then take this evaluation, he will go outside, and he'll do a much more formal appraisal of your vehicle. He will walk around it, and he'll also take it for a drive. Then he will try to determine a value for your vehicle. In order for him to determine a value for your vehicle, he's going to have to take some things into account. The first thing he's going to take into account is industry guides. He will look at what we call GALs, and what you probably have heard of things like GALs or NADA or Black Book or Blue Book. Those are industry guides to give him an idea of what your vehicle may be worth. He will also take into account auction reports. What auction reports are is they give an idea of what a vehicle like yours recently went through an auction for. So he'll take that into account as well. What he also will take into account is reconditioning costs. We can't take your vehicle as is and just put it on our lot for sale. We have to guarantee inspection and do some other things as well. So he'll take that into account as well. The other thing he takes into account is what we call supply and demand. What do I mean by that? Well, if for some reason we have 10 2003 discoveries out back that we